Man, that's just not me. That's just not me at all. I can't believe I made that decision. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I thought that. What's up, guys? This is Iron Sharpens Iron, and I know, hopefully, you let's be honest, you've been there. You've had those thoughts. I certainly have. And probably you have as well. Let's be honest, right? Well, how do we get to the point where we are not like us any longer? How do we get to the point where we are not living the life we used to live? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. And it all has to do with the concept I like to call drift. See, our lives are no different than, they're basically 100-year-long road trips from start to finish. Sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're longer, but basically life is like a 100-year road trip. And just like every road trip, we have a car, a vehicle that we drive in. I'm not talking about your body. I'm talking about your character, your car-acter. I just made that up. Your character, or your character, is what you do when nobody's watching, what we do when we think nobody's watching. If you want to know somebody else's character, a very good thing to do is to watch how they treat somebody who has nothing to offer them. That is a true test of character. But your character is what you drive in this 100-year-long road trip. And just like a road trip, there's signs all around us, there's traffic all around us, and there's indicators outside the car and inside the car that tell us when something needs our attention. And just like when you're driving on a road trip, it's possible to space out and suddenly wake up and go, where am I? How did I get here? I remember driving home after 18 plus hour shifts at work, and it was about a 15 to 20 mile drive home. And I remember leaving work, and I remember getting in my driveway, and everything in between was just non-existent in my memory. Obviously, it happened because I can't teleport. So what happened? How did I get into my driveway? Well, I drifted all the way there. Life is no different. So, what causes drift? How do we prevent it? And how do we get back on track? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. The first things I really want to talk about are what causes drift. The things that cause the most drift in my life, simply stress and burnout. Doing too much for too many people for too long that I forgot to, or just simply neglected to take care of myself. And now I love the phrase, self-care is not selfish. We have to take care of ourselves because who else is going to? So remember, self-care is not selfish, but one of the other things that causes drift are external pressures. Now, we cannot control what happens in the world around us. We can control our actions, but we cannot control the outcome of those actions. The only things we can control in life are what we do and how we respond to what happens around us. And there's many external pressures that we have no control over that can overwhelm us. And for me, I had medical bills that piled up. I had financial hardships in life. I had, foreclosure on my house, cars getting repossessed. I had delinquency notices on credit. I had all of it, all at the same time. It is not fun. That is one of the things that causes drift. The other thing that causes drift, lack of clear goals, whether it's a career goal or goals in life or personal development. The Bible says that people without a vision perish. People without goals or a purpose perish. Just like the phrase says, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. And I remember getting to the pinnacle of my career when I was in law enforcement and I became a detective and I just was brand new on a task force and I got to work undercover. It was the greatest thing ever. Then I left that assignment. I felt like I was placed into a lesser assignment and I'm not saying this is true, but at the time I felt like there was nobody else around me who could challenge me. So I became very complacent about a lot of things in my life. I had no goals. And just like the Bible says, I didn't have goals, so my career perished. So those are just some of the root causes of drift. There's more for sure, but that's just some of the things. If you've gone through something like that, or you know somebody who's going through that, they are a prime risk for drifting. So it's up to us to pay attention to ourselves if that's going through those little dead zones, or the people in our lives who matter to us, friends, loved ones, coworkers, parents, children, whoever it is. If we know they are going through these hard times, we need to pay extra attention to them because they're at risk for drifting. So what are some of the indicators? What are some of the signs that somebody could be drifting? Well, a big one is simply emotional indicators. If for me, I'm normally a very even keel type of person. I'm very, very mellow most of the time. I don't generally get overly worked up one way or another. That's just my personality. But if my kids do something like they spill a bag of chips and I instantly snap because they got crumbs on the carpet or they got crumbs on the couch, and I start yelling at them like they just intentionally broke a window, my response is not appropriate for that situation, and I become overly angry, that's an indicator that there's something that needs my attention. There's something in my life, there's something in my psychology, there's something inside of me that needs to be checked out. Because that emotional response, one, it isn't characteristic of me, and two, it's overly powerful, or it's more than what that situation calls for. So inappropriate responses or overblown responses are emotional indicators a lot of times that there's something that needs our attention. What about behavioral changes? I mean, this could be, for me, a big one is, working in law enforcement. I was very detail oriented even before I got into law enforcement. That's what made me good at being a cop. When I was a detective, I was very organized. I had to be organized to show that I should be a detective, and I had to be organized to keep that assignment for as long as I did. But then all of a sudden I was so disorganized at work, I couldn't manage my work properly. I couldn't manage my workflow. I couldn't manage my tasks. I couldn't manage my time. I couldn't even manage evidence. It was so bad to the point that I misplaced files. I missed deadlines. I misplaced evidence and was accused of stealing it. That's a red flag. The problem is, the red flag is me crashing into a wall and ignoring all the red flags up to it. I ignored all of the red flags leading up to it, and that's a problem. It's like driving with the check engine light on for way too long. Well, what else? What about loss of motivation or passion? If there's things in our life that bring us joy, hobbies, for example, going to the gym, working out, spending time with friends or coworkers, if we enjoy cooking, all of a sudden the things that we normally do that we no longer do, that's an indicator that there's something wrong. What about loss of passion? Just like that, the emoji movie, the meh emoji. When you're just blah. You ask somebody, hey, how are you this morning? And they're like, well, I woke up. Hey, how's your day going? Well, I'm here. Well, hey man, how are things going? Well, I'm not dead. We've all heard, hopefully we haven't said it, but we've all at least heard responses like that, right? Well, that response basically says, I'm alive, I'm not dead, but I really don't care what happens either way. Now, is that really how we feel? Yeah, at some point, sometimes that is how we feel. But if your son, your daughter, your wife, your sister, your parents, somebody you care about said that to you, they literally said, I'm alive and I don't care if I live or die, what would you do about it? Well, that response of what you would do about it should be no different than what your response would be if somebody at work that you care about, if you ask them how they're going and they're like, it's just another day, right? That response should be the same because it's an indication of the same underlying problems, which is drift. Right? Now that we know, what some of the root causes are, we know some of the indicators, let's talk about how do we get back on track. Well, the biggest, simplest, easiest one is just reconnect with our core values, our core beliefs. Get back to basics. Get back to, what I like to say, get back to your first love. Get back to the things that you enjoyed doing before you felt like you were down in the dumps all the time. For me, that could be going for walks. It could be working out. It could be computer programming at this point. Now that I don't work in law enforcement anymore, I started my own business. I do graphic design. I build websites. I do logo design. I design business. I do all this stuff that is creative in nature, but it gives me the ability to create something that I can enjoy with other people. That brings me a lot of happiness and a lot of joy. But whatever it is for you, whether it's baking, barbecuing, weightlifting, building model cars, reading comic books, whatever it is, whatever you used to do for fun that you are no longer doing, get back to that. That will help you get back on track. The biggest one though, quite simply having meaningful goals and living for a purpose, living for something that's bigger than ourselves. Not only will that counteract any sort of anxiety or depression in our life, that will get us back on track. Like I said, people without a vision perish. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. You're never going to get anywhere meaningful. So have a goal, because when it comes to life, you can either live a life by design or you can live a life by default. Which do you want? Design or default? So have that meaningful goal, have that meaningful purpose in your life so that you are constantly making progress towards something important. That will keep you on track more than anything else. So there you have it. That's our video for today. That's what I want to bring to you. Stop drifting. Stop living that life of not like us. Stop living a life where you are no longer the person that you want to be. Live a life of purpose. More importantly, we talked about, what the root causes are, what the warning signs are, the indicators, and how to get back on track. There's no reason you cannot get your life back on track today or help somebody else get their life back on track when you notice them drifting around you. That's it for this video for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.